Well, hello there. I didn't see you come in. Make yourself at home. Have a drink. While I give some attention to some underappreciated characters and storylines that I personally love. And I hope you grow to love as well. Hey there, everybody. Just letting you know, the podcast you're about to listen to is the free version. And all that means is that this is way behind where I'm at in the actual Patreon version. So if you're liking these Hellblazer episodes and you need to have some more, you can't get enough John Constantine, then fear not, I got you covered. Go over to patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books and sign up for the Hellblazer tier, where we are at least 30 issues ahead of wherever we're at in the free version. And once again, you can find those at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. All right, enough of that. Let's get into some Hellblazer. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Matt's Minis Hellblazer. Today, we're reading Hellblazer number 7. And we start off with the cover here. It's a pretty cool cover. This is like one of the first ones that's actually had like real people on the cover. Most of them are very esoteric and whatnot. But this one, it shows John actually holding on to like his friend who's slumped in a chair. And it looks like his friend's soul is leaving his body. And there's some cool, like, I don't know, weird lines that it looks like an image is broken up above them. And you can't really tell what it is, but it looks cool. And we start off on the first page here, and it looks like John and Zed are on a date of some kind. They're in a movie theater. They're watching, I don't know, some weird 50s scary movie. And they're not really paying attention to the movie, though. They are getting hot and heavy in this theater. It is gross because they show a bunch of trash on the ground underneath the seats and stuff. So, but as it's getting more hot and heavy, we kind of realize, and also because the artwork is by a different artist, so it gives it like a different feel than the normal comic has been so far, and that's for a reason. And as John and Zed get into the love makings, Zed like opens up her chest and pulls off her skin and shows like a weird zipper that you can unzip her body. It's a dream basically. And underneath everything is just her skeleton. And then we see that she is still wearing her like cross necklace. And so it kind of goes with the last issue. If you remember, Zed got confronted by the Resurrection Crusade, and they were calling her Mary, and they were like, you need to come back. So Zed, in all her like punk gloriness, is some kind of, or was part of some kind of religious cult, and they're trying to get her back. So Constantine has this dream, and then he wakes up and he's on a train, and we have the classic artwork here that is the normal John Ridgway artwork, and looks like he's possibly been drinking, but we're not sure. But everybody that sees him along the way definitely thinks he's drunk. So he takes a cab to some industrial part of the town. The Weedy Bricks factory is where he's going. And the reason he's going there is because he's got a buddy. His buddy is named Richie, and his buddy's like a tech guru guy. And this is in the 80s. So this is a really fun issue because this is like before anyone understood the internet or any of that shit. And it's kind of like Snow Crash or Neuromancer or those kind of books where they're just like, they go on the internet and and walk around on top of circuit boards and stuff. It's really cool visually, but it's very funny as well. So Richie says he works at this factory not because he cares particularly about the Weetabix company or he likes his job. What it does is it gives him access to all this hardware, he says, and then he points to a giant computer console that is probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars back in the 80s. All to make cereal, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what Weetabix makes other than it sounds like a cereal breakfast food or something. But he says that he's been trying to help Constantine out by figuring out what these Resurrection Crusaders are up to and kind of like hacking into their system. But he hasn't had that much like luck with it. He did hear about something called the Tongues of Fire, and he knows where the Tongues of Fire, like I guess you'd call it like their secure website portal is or something. Like he can literally travel to where I guess their like link up to the internet is. So once again, this is like 80s technology lingo and stuff. So it's kind of funny. But before he goes into the internet, he's talking about how basically he's figured out how to connect his brain into the internet, and all you need is some judicious chemogenesis, which is basically him taking weed or mushrooms, and then he can put his consciousness right in the computer because his brain waves and the waves of the quantum realm or whatever, meld, and then he says he can move in and out of the fifth dimension, and it's some kind of quantum magic. So Richie gets the computer set up because he's going to try to go into the internet and break into the Tongues of Fire, I guess, portal or whatever, and look at all their files and see if he can figure out for Constantine what's going on. So he takes a hit of weed. He hooks up some, I guess, wires to his head, like monitors or whatever. And then he jacks into the internet or the Matrix or whatever. And the art is very cool in this. This is probably the best thing about this issue is the art of him going into the internet, becoming digital. It's just like very, very creative. It looks like a very cool version of like one of those 90s movies where people go into the internet or whatever. But this is before. This is 1988, so this is very cool looking for the time. I love the artwork for this issue. It's so cool, and John Ridgway is a true master. So as Richie kind of gets acquainted with the digital world again, he's talking to Constantine, and Constantine's like, you just slip right into limbo. It's pretty bloody spooky in here, but once you're in, you can virtually go anywhere. And Constantine doesn't seem to give a fuck. He's just like, at first he seemed like he was like into all this tech stuff that Richie was talking about, and he seemed like, oh yeah, totally, mate. And then the second Richie gets like hooked in, Constantine's like, all right, I'm gonna go get coffee. Like he just leaves him sitting there and doing his thing, I guess, for him. And like the whole time Richie's talking to him like, so yeah, it's so cool in here. I'm walking by this or that, or this is what I'm seeing. And Constantine's not even there. He's going to get coffee. So then we cut to Zed, who's hanging out with Ray. If you remember, Ray is Constantine's friend from the last issue, who was revealed that he has AIDS. So he's kind of going through hard times. And they kind of have like a little heart-to-heart and get to know each other. Specifically, Zed gets to know him because they're revealing that he had like a lover or a husband, although they probably couldn't get married in the 80s, and he died in the Falklands War. So honestly, I don't know that much about the Falklands War, but from what I recall, it was a war that a lot of people did not care about or want to happen, and it was for some islands off of Argentina, I believe, something like that. If I'm getting that wrong, I apologize, but that's what I remember from it. So anyway, he's telling her that his lover died in that war, and, it's like a very heartfelt scene. And then, but what's also going on in the background of this scene is we see the Resurrection Crusade is outside his house. They break into his door as she's talking to him. They hear what Ray is saying about, his lover and all that stuff. And of course, they're super religious. So they break through the door and try to take Zed. And when he speaks up, they're like, silence, you sodomite, or whatever. So they're super hateful towards him because they're very homophobic. Ray even puts up his fists to protect her and says, get out of here. But there's a total of 4 guys. One of them seems to be Zed's actual father. But then there's 3 young guys who are with him, and they proceed to severely attack him and beat him up. Zed is pulled out of the apartment by her father and is taken in a van. And then we cut back to Constantine, who is beating the shit out of a coffee machine that's not cooperating. And the way that was cut from the beating up of Ray to the beating up of this coffee machine, leads me to believe they kind of like didn't want to show the full extent of his beating, but they do show the coffee machine very kind of broken, and then there's like coffee leaking out of it all over. So I assume that's just supposed to be like them kind of alluding to what happens to Ray, that he is bleeding out now and is not in good shape. After his fight with the coffee machine, Constantine comes back into the room where Richie is, his body is just kind of in a limp state in a chair, but he can still talk through the computer. He's talking to John. John walks in and says, hey, is anybody there? Like, talking to his body. And out of the speakers of the computer, Richie's like, hey, I got to concentrate. Stop fucking around. I'm like right on the edge of the Tongues of Fire network. And that he's got to go carefully because there's a lot of booby traps as he's, trying to get into this thing. And like, basically, if he hits one, it could be like a big problem, because if I'm assuming it's kind of like the Matrix, if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life. So Constantine, though, is just like, yeah, okay, great. Can you hurry it up a little bit? I've got a train to catch. And then we get this cool page of Richie walking through the digital space of the network, I guess, where it looks like he's walking on like a circuit board, and he's got like an astral body of him. We get a little narration from Richie where he's talking about like, man, Constantine says, hurry it up. That's typical Constantine. But like, he should try to do what I'm doing. He should try following a $10 pyramid of prayer donation from Liberty, Iowa, through 20 different computer systems to an account in Barclays Bank, Glastonbury, England. And that was the easy part. This Tongues of Fire system is like nothing he's ever gotten into before. And so, yeah, he's trying to not get hit by these, like, I guess, landmines, we'll call them. But it's basically just the firewall of this Tongues of Fire network. And as he's narrating, he brings up that John hasn't been the same since Newcastle, and things got all crazy at Newcastle, and it changed us all. So Richie was one of his friends that was at Newcastle. If you remember, all of his friends who were at Newcastle have died. In the Swamp Thing book, at least, the ones that came up that were like, oh yeah, I remember Newcastle, they all died except Constantine. I don't think they've revealed exactly what happened at Newcastle, but basically it was them being stupid when they were young, resurrecting some kind of demon, and then having to suffer the consequences as it killed people before they could, I guess, subdue it or get it back into hell. So it was them being stupid as kids, basically. So, and then he's talking, and he's like, okay, this one's bloody strange, though. They certainly don't want any unauthorized access into the system. Talk about defenses. This is a positive minefield of booby-trapped logic bombs. And then and he says, a wrong move here could be fatal. And Richie hits one of those logic bombs, I guess. And Constantine's like, oh, Richie, are you all right? You better come out now. The machine looks restless, because he's watching like a screen. That's funny because the screen just has like waves on it, like looks like different color wavelengths or something. So I don't know how he knows what's going on, but it doesn't look good. Maybe it was all one line before and now it's all over the place. But either way, we get a good description of what's happening. He narrates, synapses flash and pop like flashbulb supernova as the particular passion of my being is caught up in a subatomic slam dance. Consciousness is snatched by electron riptides and thinly spread through infinite spatial black, leaving thoughts, rare sleeping islands separated by oceanic eternities. I'm stretched, elastic life wound in a double helix around a universal pole, a string of neurons in the cosmic brain, resonant, my brain tuned to everything. And Constantine's like, Richie, are you okay? And as he's going through this, there's some really, really cool artwork on the page where it kind of shows his body like being pulled into like, I don't know if it's him flying forward or if his body's actually separating into multiple parts in this digital space, but he's having some kind of spiritual moment in this digital space because it says, now contraction catapults my soul into a new triumphant birth. Rhapsodic, bathed in perfect grace, I sail for eons, blessed in beatific tranquility, alive in a universe of glory, at play with angels above this fierce and holy sun. But, transient as elemental thought, my voyage lasts but a brief millennia. I must start the long return to dull corporeality and reclaim my body's tawdry clay. So he's like, okay, he had this weird, crazy religious experience where like he basically, it seems like he saw the universe or like shook hands with the universe or whatever, and but in this digital space. And then in the real world, though, Constantine's looking at his body. He's like, come on, man, speak to me. And as he says that, Richie's body starts to smoke, and Constantine's like, oh my God, he's burning up. And literally his body starts burning up. He spontaneously combusts. And before he like fully combusts, Constantine ran over to get a fire extinguisher, but it was too late. As he picks up the extinguisher, his body literally just turns into ash right away. Like his skeleton is all that's left, and even that is pretty charred. And Constantine's like, oh my God. And like Richie's dead. And then all of a sudden out of the computer he hears, John, hey John, if you're listening, I had a bit of a close call back there, but I'm on my way back. And John's like, hey buddy, I don't know how to tell you this. And then Richie's like, oh, you won't believe where I've been. Basically, you know, it was like a whole new universe. You should try it, John. What a rush. Hey, would you mind getting some coffee? I'm always parched after one of these jaunts. And the art in this section is really good because at first John is like confused and like, what the fuck? Like he's still alive in this box, basically, like his consciousness. And then as Richie was saying like, hey, why don't you give me some coffee? He's like, realizes, oh shit, like I can't, like I have to do something. My friend is trapped in the Matrix, but I can't do anything. And he says like, God damn it all to hell. Why is it that everything I touch lately turns to shit in my hands? And Richie's still talking about like how amazing the experience he had was. And he said it feels like Nirvana, basically. And as he's doing that, Constantine lights a cigarette and then goes over to his friend's skull now and pulls off the burned leads that were going to his head. And his narration says, how do you tell someone that his body's burned to the ground while he was out? I mean, he's not going to be able to claim off his insurance, is he? And Richie's like, hey, buddy, I'm nearly there now. How's that coffee coming? And he's like, it's weird. This place has changed since I left, but where's my bloody link? Constantine, what have you done? Is this a joke? And Constantine's like, no, it's not a joke, Richie. I'm sorry, mate. And then Richie's like, come on, man, you're freaking me out. Please, what's happened to the way out? And then John walks over to the power plug for this computer system, and he says, goodbye, Richie. And Richie's like, what do you mean goodbye? Please, John, And then John pulls the plug on the computer system and kills his friend. And he narrates, call me a coward if you like, but I can't take any screaming. No flash, no bang. Nothing but the black, lapping darkness of the void. And this is literally one of the most fucked up endings or like things to happen to one of his friends, I think. Just because he had to literally see his friend burn alive, like the body. And then he has to hear his friend beg and tell him, like, what the fuck are you doing, Constantine? And then he's got to pull the plug on his friend's consciousness. It's just super fucked up, I think. I read this and was just like, Jesus Christ. And so anyway, Constantine after that is taking the train back into London, and he's starting to fall asleep, and he's starting to have dreams again. He's seeing all of his friends who have died that we talked about earlier, the ones that were from Newcastle. Constantine narrates, I feel like an old soldier attending one by one the funerals of war comrades. Richie was the last of them, the Newcastle team. Benjamin got it first from the Involce and me. So that was in Swamp Thing. Then Gary Lester from Nemoth and me. And now Richie's incinerated by the tongues of fire and me. And so like basically Constantine, because his friends are helping him all the time in these dangerous situations, Constantine's not the one being put in harm's way most of the time. It's always his friends that are helping him out. They always put themselves, or in the process of helping them out, are put in harm's way. And Constantine seems to know, like deep down, that this is going to happen potentially, and maybe that's why he puts his friends there, and that's why they keep dying. But he kind of pushes that all down and just kind of starts smoking, and then, but like literally, his friends are ghosts around him, and they're talking to him, and one of them says, "We all got to pay our dues, man." And then another one says, "Like you say, John, it's all a matter of personal responsibility." John actually talks out loud to them and says, like, "All right, fine, if you're going to haunt me or kill me or whatever, punish me, then do it." And they're like, "You've got us all wrong. We want to help you solve the problem." And the nun friend of his that's like a ghost is saying, "Your soul is troubled, my son. You need help from the Lord." And Constantine's like, the way I see it, the Lord's a big part of this problem, because obviously the Resurrection Crusade is causing the issue. And his other friend is like, "No, the big part of the problem, buddy, is that you're interested in satisfying your sexual appetites. You're just a dirty old man, and you're going to screw up because of it." And Constantine narrates, "Suddenly the walls of the room are twisting and shaking, closing in on me. She's halfway right, of course, but I don't have to listen to her tell me. It's too crowded in here, too hot." And so he goes over to one of the doors. I guess it's like a normal exit door of this train. And he's like, "I've got to get some air." And he just throws the door open and jumps out of a moving train. And he even tells himself, "Very silly, John," as he's like flying out of the door, about to like land, probably going, 50, 60 miles an hour or whatever. Then we cut to Zed, who's been taken by the tongues of fire and people. She's sitting in a room that's very, very dark, except for a lit up cross above her and one light that's shining down on her. And she looks like she's on some kind of medical table that she's obviously just had some kind of procedure done, or at least like a physical done on her. We see her father is talking to a couple doctors, and there's like another man there from probably the church. And the dad is saying, "Can we still use her now that the sanctity of her physical temple has been violated by that corrupt conjurer?" So because her and Constantine had sex, he's like, "I don't know if we can still do this." But the doctors are like, "Virginity would have been preferable, but mental alignment is more important. We'll never find a better psychological profile. I suggest intensive re-education beginning tomorrow in Glastonbury." And I might have forgot to mention, but basically when Richie was in the internet, he had told John that Glastonbury was where like all the money was going to. So John knows he's got to go to Glastonbury next. So we see the next issue is called Intensive Care. So that's it for this issue. If you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email me at planestrains.and-comic-books, all one word, @gmail.com. And we'll see you on the next one.